Thank you for joining us. I am Kathy from Saguenay Native Plant Community, and I am joined here tonight by Lexi. Lexi, say hi.
Hi, everyone.
And we are here to talk tonight about preventing landscape weeds with beautiful native ground cover plants. We're pretty much in full steam ahead now with this exciting gardening season, and whatever plants you're growing, whether they're native plants or your roses or your azaleas or whatever your favorite plants are, all gardeners or landscapers in general struggle with weeds. And I'm telling you, from the rain we've been having, it seems like the weeds are out of control this year. And more people are telling me about the problem they're having with weeds in their gardens. And one of the we're going to talk about the different methods that we can use to control those weeds. And of course, as you can tell from our title, we think the best method is beautiful native ground cover plants, but we'll get there. A good place to start this talk is, what is a weed? We throw this word around, and um, a lot of times, prairie plants or native plants have been thought of as weeds or wildflowers or so on. A weed is really it's much more simplistic than that. A weed is a plant that is growing where it is not valued. Most common landscape weeds are non-native. So native plants are not weeds. In fact, it's quite the opposite. So most are non-native plants that have been brought to the U.S. either intentionally or accidentally, and they didn't evolve here. The insects and creatures didn't evolve with them, so they're just not preferred, and they're able to kind of take over because there's no check and balance with them, and many of them can get very aggressive to the point where they're actually considered an invasive species. We all know, and we all do a ton of it, and I guess it's probably good for our waistline, but pulling weeds can be a very laborious task, and it's just not the most fun part of gardening. So we're going to be talking tonight about other ways that we can prevent weeds from growing in our landscape, how we can prevent them rather than have to remove them. But before we get going on specifics, I just want to ask you, if you like the content that Sag Moraine brings to you, please subscribe to our channel. Please hit the subscribe button so that more people can see and have access to this content. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lexi for a few minutes.
All right, so where do we typically see weeds? We see a lot of weeds in lawns. We also see weeds maybe in cracks and driveways and walkways that they might pop up. And we also see them in our flower beds or anywhere that there's maybe some bare soil or old mulch or something where they can pop up. The most problematic that we found is really within the lawn, because a lot of people use chemical weed killers and pre-emergent herbicides to get rid of those weeds. And these chemicals are toxic to pollinators, birds, and to us as well. They degrade the quality and diversity of our local ecosystem. And if you can imagine, everything that's being sprayed on those lawns also can run off into our storm sewers and drains. And so it's affecting our water quality as well. So this is kind of a long-standing problem, and a lot of people are advised to, oh, just spray it. It's fine. It doesn't matter. It doesn't affect things, and everything will look nice and tidy. But unfortunately, the effects of these chemicals is really huge, and they're very detrimental to our pets and our children. If you're told by a landscaper that these chemicals aren't going to affect them, we'd like to just warn you otherwise that, no matter how little or how natural they say the concoction is, that really these are not safe for people or pets to be around.
I am a big dog lover, and I always have dogs, and I do dog training and working with dogs in various capacities, and I talk to a lot of dog owners and dog people. I can't tell you how many stories I have heard of people whose dogs started having seizures after being exposed to a sprayed lawn, after having their lawn service um, come, and then they developed issues from that. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Lexi. If if a lawn service tells you that these are completely safe for kids and dogs, that is absolutely not true.
And also for the workers, it's just kind of sad that,
Ugh.
these people are working and they're around this stuff all the time. And it really comes down to just this aesthetic of perfection with no weeds and, one mass of green velvet. And we just really kind of need to shift our culture and our thinking that that isn't beneficial for anybody. More expensive. So why don't we do something that's better for the environment? And the lawns in themselves are just kind of an issue. One of the best ways to just control your weeds is just mow. Just mow once a week and mow down the ones you don't want, and it'll look nice and tidy and good enough from the curbside.
And you know what? Most of those weeds are going to be green during the droughts of summer when your lawn is brown.
Yeah.
So,
So there's some other ways that we've been told that we can prevent weeds, and we just want to go through a couple of them because you'll hear people say, "Oh, just do this and just do that," and you can block them out. They all have some of their own unique problems. So landscape fabric is pretty common. Typically, this will be put down underneath landscape rock or under mulch as another barrier. But unfortunately, this really restricts movement and life within the soil. And if you're talking about plants, you definitely want to do anything you can to support the life of those plants, and that relies on having good soil. Another issue with these is that they will just break down over time and just become completely ineffective. And it really depends on the weather and the conditions on how quickly that's going to happen. So you've invested a lot of time and money into this fabric, and it's really not going to do very much. And then a lot of weeds are so aggressive, they'll just grow right through it. Dandelions will grow
mhm.
through this stuff. And it makes it a little bit more difficult to pull up any weeds that you do want to get rid of, and you can just hand pull or use a little tool to dig out. You're going to have to dig through this material. So it's expensive, not environmentally sound, and just really not a good option.
Yeah, and as you said, like as it breaks down, more and more weeds start coming through it, but there's still enough of it left to make it that much harder to get the roots out of the weed.
And some of those have some extensive roots.
Yes. I love when you're pulling a dandelion, even though dandelions really aren't bad, but when you're pulling a dandelion and you hear that pop and you see it and you pull out that long root.
That long taproot, and there's always a worm around that
Yes.
dandelion root because it's
Yeah.
nutritious. It likes being with the dandelion. All right, this is our favorite one in the southwest suburbs of Chicago.
Lexi, I just want to tell you all, Lexi is an expert on landscape rock. How many
Just
tons did
removing
you
it.
remove from your property, Lexi?
We removed 20 tons, maybe more than that. Luckily, I had a friend with a dumpster business, and he let me load up his dumpsters with the lava rock. The one good thing about lava rock, I'll have to say, is that it's light. And so removing lava rock is not quite as bad as river rock because you had river rock, Kathy.
I had River Rock and I had somebody helping me, as I was, redoing my front landscaping and converting it more to native plants and so on. I have a landscaper who was helping me and he had to remove all of my river rock and he removed a good 7 tons or better of river rock. And he said to me, he goes, "What is it with people in the suburbs of Chicago or especially in the southwest suburbs where we are?" They said, "You all love your river rock. Everywhere I go, I got to remove tons and tons of river rock just to find the soil."
Yeah, you just kind of have to wonder, like, what were people thinking? And why is this considered beautiful? Actually, to keep this maintained and to keep this rock looking good, you'd have to clean your rock. The landscape fabric is going to break down at some point, and you're going to have weeds coming through. Mine was definitely in place for a good 20 years, and eventually, I had some help with it, but there were many hours of digging this stuff out by hand, and a lot of it got compacted into the soil too. So when we're talking about affecting the soil, these things really can have detrimental effects years on. It may look good for a year or two, but years down the road, somebody wants to come in and actually be a gardener. well, this is going to affect their ability to do that. So problem with landscape rock, it doesn't break down or add nutrients to the soil. It actually can make things a lot hotter. So you're really cooking that soil underneath, and insects aren't going to want to be in that soil because it's so hot. It increases the pH of the soil, which is also not good for the plant's health. And it's very difficult, like we just said, to move if you change your mind. So once it's in place, it is a big job to get rid of. There are some techniques that people have used using tarps, and this is maybe one good use of a leaf blower is for lava rock. You can actually blow the lava rock out. It's light enough to do that, but with something like river rock, you wouldn't be able to do that.
Right. And you're just reminding me when I had that river rock removed, the soil, the clay soil that we have here that was underneath it, it was just so dry and pulverized. And when you would dig into it, which was difficult to do, there was nothing there. There was no life, there was no worm, there was nothing. It was just a dry desert of soil with no life. And it's like, because the heat, how rock is just heating up that soil underneath makes it completely inhospitable to
It's
for life.
it's like being in a compacted, just post-construction soil. That is really what it felt like. And in this case, it might be good if you have to remove it to amend the soil with something to get it going again. So to add some
Mhm.
compost and leaf mulch and hopefully help it along to get back to healthy.
Absolutely. Speaking of mulch, another option to help control weeds is wood mulch, which is a much better option than rock. Um, However, a lot of I'm telling you, as time goes on, we just get more chemicals and chemicals and chemicals in our environment. There was a time you could go out and just buy mulch, which was kind of more natural mulch. Now it's all dyed to be different colors, red mulch, black mulch. I mean, all these different, colors. So a lot of it is treated with chemicals and dyes that are going into the soil and getting into our environment and can get into our water system, just like the chemicals we were talking about to the herbicides to remove weeds. This also blocks ground access to insects. A lot of insects need to reach the ground to be able to do their complete their metamorphosis, say from caterpillar to butterfly or caterpillar to moth. They need to be able to get under through whatever is and reach the soil. It does break down quickly and needs to be reapplied yearly to be effective. To really be effective at preventing weeds, you need a good 3 to 4 inches of mulch. And in order to maintain that, you're going to need to be applying it pretty much every year. So that can become laborious and costly, very costly.
And if you really do have to use wood mulch, we recommend using the undyed, untreated, plain wood mulch. Don't use this dyed stuff. Just
Absolutely.
not good for the environment.
Absolutely. A better type of mulch is what is called leaf mulch, and that is exactly what it is. It is made up of ground leaves. I love leaf mulch. I love the look of it. I love the smell of it. It works, it works very well for a time. But so it's a much better option. It's a very healthy option for our environment. It's a very sustainable way to create mulch. It's very healthy for our soil. It breaks down and feeds the microbes, and it's an effective weed killer for a period of time. It's soft and allows the insects to get through. And as I said, it adds nutrients. However, it breaks down very quickly. I mean, when our leaves fall in the winter, if you're, if you don't, if you go into natural areas where they're not blowing the weeds, or my yard where I'm not really blowing the leaves unless they're on my areas of lawn, but it they break down and they add nutrients to the soil, and leaves break down pretty quickly. You don't have very many of last fall's leaves left once spring gets here. So the leaf mulch is going to have to be, it breaks down so quickly, it's going to have to be reapplied very often to remain effective. I mean, sometimes I feel like it doesn't even last a whole season, to be honest with you. So that can get expensive. It's much less expensive than wood mulch, but because you have to reapply it so frequently, it can get more expensive. It's also difficult to find in garden centers. Very few garden centers carry leaf mulch. You can create your own leaf mulch. You can just put leaves on your garden beds, and that will help prevent weeds. Not everybody's going to like that look of just having, non-mulched leaves on their garden beds if they're trying to go for a neater look. So it may not be your taste to have that. So, and even if you do decide to use your own fallen leaves, it can be labor intensive to, be raking leaves and moving them to all of your beds to maintain that adequate multiple inch barrier that we need to have in order to really be an effective leaf preventative. I mean, weed preventative.
The good news is with native plants, and this is one of my garden beds from last summer, and all these plants have filled in already. So I used the leaf mulch when I initially planted this bed, and now everything has filled in to the point where they're blocking out the weeds just naturally. So, it might not have to be every season that you have to put your leaf mulch on. It's really great for new beds and trying to get things established.
That's a great point, Lexi, because what we're going to be talking about next is a different kind of mulch you could use that is going to make it so you don't ever have to apply mulch again, right?
That's right. Our favorite, which is green mulch. So green mulch, not native ground cover plants can become your green mulch and they will become your best friend because they can really easily fill into areas that you might have in existing flower beds, or if you have a bare patch of soil like on a hilltop under a tree, get something to fill in. A lot of these plants are going to range in light conditions from full sun to full shade. So that means that they can adapt to any of these conditions in and around other plants that might be your favorite. So if you have some roses, if you have some hydrangeas, adding green mulch around them will save you from weeding around these plants and will also provide benefit to those plants too by keeping more moisture in the soil. In addition to that, they attract all kinds of different insects and pollinators and life into your garden, which is just so exciting to see. So they're beautiful. It adds more green and consistency. And I think that's why, our brains have been trained that, oh, we like the mulch look. We like how clean things look. But this is a different kind of clean. It keeps a consistent color, this carpet
Mhm.
of green, and it is a beneficial and life-giving carpet. So once it gets established, there's really very little work that you need to put into these ground covers. A lot of them don't require a lot of watering. They'll just deal with whatever rain they get. And if there's droughts, they can survive those as well. So this is going to be less costly, less labor intensive in the long run, and create a healthier ecosystem. So how do these plants do that? Well, they can become host. Some of them are host plants for different moths and butterflies. Some of them are bird food for the birds during the winter, and they also provide habitat. So we want to make sure we're giving life-giving habitat back to all the creatures that visit our yards.
I mean, think of how perfect. We're creating habitat, we're feeding the birds, we're feeding the butterflies, and we're preventing the weeds. I mean, think of how much work we're saving ourselves. I mean, and once you give these plants a couple of years to establish a good root system and start spreading out, I mean, I don't know about everybody else, but watering, I mean, remember, if you have the ground covered with all of this greenery, that ground can't dry out to the same level. So when we have droughts and we have these ground covers, you're not, or in general, you're not going to have to do near the watering that you have to do with open ground or mulched ground, because that just dries out because it's still getting sun. The plants aren't creating shade, and so you don't have to do the watering, you don't have to do the weed pulling, and all of a sudden now you can have a beautiful sanctuary with less than half the work.
Sounds good to me.
Love it. No more bending.
No more bending, no more backaches.
Yeah.
Save those for planting days.
That's right. That's right.
So we're going to do a part 2 of this webinar where we're going to go into each of these plants in detail, but we wanted to just give you an overview of some ones that we're going to be covering in that part 2, and we'll go into depth about their local ecosystem range and their sunlight and moisture conditions and which ones might be good for what, and also which ones are going to be more aggressive because a lot of us need something that's actually aggressive and can take over an area quickly and fill it in so nothing has the chance to get in. So I'll just go over this first list quickly. So the first one will be maidenhair fern, beautiful fern. I have this in my garden. Wild geranium. This is a native plant classic, woodland flower. Prairie
Classic.
smoke, which is also my background today. This plant is just awesome. It can withstand so much, and it's so beautiful. Likes a bunch of different conditions. Virginia waterleaf, this is another classic woodland plant in the Illinois region. Canada anemone, this is one of the ones that can be more aggressive. So if you need to fill in quickly, that's going to be your friend. Field
But I
pussy
can tell
toes.
you, but I can tell you that I have it in a difficult part of my yard under some trees and shrubs in a shady area, and it is found an area that it likes, and it just kind of stays there, and it is blooming now, and it's just gorgeous, and it just stays in this area of maybe, at least in my yard, it's staying in this area of maybe 4 feet by 6 feet, and it's just gorgeous. And it
Oh,
just
wow.
stays there. Decided this is where I like, and we're not going anywhere else.
Oh, that's great. It's such a
Yeah.
pretty plant too. A beautiful dainty
Oh, it's so
flower.
pretty. It's very fresh looking. It's very fresh.
It kind
All
of
I can
looks like
say,
the wild geranium too, like the foliage looks a little bit similar.
it does. You're right, it does. Okay,
Now,
I
and now field pussy toes, this is also one that you have, right?
I do. I do, and it did great this year.
So this one is a nice one. You can
And
also
I
pair it
just
with
planted it
prairie
last
smoke.
year. That's the thing. I put it in last year, and it was really something already this year, this spring when it bloomed, and it really spread and covered some open areas, dry open areas. Anyway, I know we're going to get more into all of these plants in the next one, but just giving you a teaser.
Well, we can't hide our excitement about plants, so we just
Yeah.
go crazy. Wild ginger. This is another awesome ground cover for shade, and this is actually in our cover slide too. It's you'll find this in lots of different woodlands. There's two varieties, one that's native to here. There's another one that's native to further south in the country, but really cool plant. It actually does have a flower, but you can't see it in this picture. It's on the underside of the leaves. And then this one, big leaf aster, this has become one of my favorite plants. It actually likes so many different conditions. It attracts all the bees in the yard. It's a late summer bloomer. It's a great, spreading plant. It's a beautiful option too.
So then we have our sedges, and that's a whole other area like of grassy plants. This is the picture we were talking about before. If you wanted to be a little bit plainer and just more of a peaceful, green, serene, grassy look, sedges, and specifically this one, Pennsylvania sedge, is a great option and would look great in more of a woodland garden. We have mist flower, which I have some of this in my yard near the anemone, which is just beautiful late season and really effective. I mean, I got to tell you guys, I never have to pull a weed in my backyard. I never, because that is more established, and I have ground covers and plants around everywhere, and I never have to pull weeds anymore. I just, I'm not trying to make you jealous. It is what it is. Another one would be stiff coreopsis. Coreopsis, wonderful group of plants that we'll be talking more about. Of course, wild strawberry, a keystone plant in our area, just vital to our local ecosystem and beautiful as well. And yes, the strawberries are edible. Another type of fern, sensitive fern, which it is sensitive because when you touch it, it will move. Golden groundsel, one of my favorites, and I'll be talking about more of that next week. But this, along with wild ginger, has just been a game changer for me in some difficult dry areas. Obedient plant, another wonderful one. Mayapple, great for some very difficult sites that we'll be talking about. I don't have Solomon seal. You have some of that, don't you, Lexi?
Yeah, this seems to be a little bit slower to take off, but I think it's just such an elegant, beautiful plant, and the leaves are kind of waxy and looks like something you'd see in a botanical garden. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
excited to see how this one takes off this year. Another one would be short tooth mountain mint. This one I currently don't have, but you have this one, right?
I do have mountain mints, yes, and boy, they really attract the pollinators, and they are just a carefree plant and forget.
Nice. We love the
Yes,
mint family.
yes, and rabbits don't, so that's another perk.
Right, keep away the rabbits. And then stone crop, we were just talking about this, but what a cool succulent plant. And this one we've got coming up at the plant sale. I'm excited to see some of this in person this year. But this is our native stone crop. There's many different cultivars of stone crop, but the wild one is definitely going to have the most ecological value and be a great ground cover. Zigzag goldenrod. This is a nice late season bloomer, low to the ground, not aggressive. Foam flower, what a beautiful, elegant
Mhm.
plant. It would be really great in a little border. And then wild petunia, which is one that I'm really excited to see this summer come out and spread its wings and take over some little areas that I need to fill in.
So next week, we are going to be talking more specifically about all of these different plants. What are some different sites that they will do well in, some tips on how to plant them, how close together to plant them to get them to spread out and eliminate your weed problems. So as you're pulling weeds this week, think about the green mulch of native ground covers, and we will be back next week again to talk more specifics about the individual plants. In the meantime, please subscribe to our channel so that you know when our videos and our live streams are coming on. And we will see you next week to talk more about creating or reducing the work in your garden by preventing weeds with beautiful native ground covers. Thank you for joining us, everyone. See you next week.
Thanks. See you next week.